Sacagawea was in horrible pain during Lewis and Clark's expedition, and scholars recently uncovered the horrific reason why. When she was a teenage mom, this Shoshone explorer tied her baby to her back and fearlessly traveled westward across America as part of Lewis and Clark's famous expedition. For most people, that's pretty much the beginning and end of Sacagawea's story, but they'd be wrong. From her perilous childhood to her nightmare of a marriage, there's so much more to know about this Indigenous icon. In 1788, an extraordinary young girl took her first breaths. Her name was Sacagawea, and she was part of what we now know as the Shoshone tribe. She lived in the mountainous terrain on the border of Montana and Idaho. We don't know much about Sacagawea's early years, but what we do know is pretty terrifying. An enemy tribe called the Hidatsa viciously attacked her people when she was very young. During the brutal raid, 4 men, 4 women, and several boys were killed. Sacagawea somehow managed to survive the attack, but she wasn't safe. She figured that running away was her best shot at getting out of there alive. But sadly, fate had other ideas. Sacagawea realized that she wouldn't be able to escape the enemy tribe. They abducted her and carted her off to their lands, where her life went from bad to worse. Despite Sacagawea's young age, it doesn't look like the Hidatsa went easy on their new hostage. She was little more than a servant for 3 long years. Then, when she turned 16, everything changed, but not for the better. After her birthday, her captors sold her off to a man named Toussaint Charbonneau. This dude was very bad news. Before Charbonneau married our heroine, he once tried to violently assault a woman. The young lady's mother saw Charbonneau midway through his attack. She stabbed him and screamed at him to get away from her daughter. This is the man Sacagawea was marrying. The red flags just don't stop with this guy. Guess what Sacagawea's new husband did for a living? According to some sources, he sold women into slavery. Now, while that delightful tidbit isn't 100% verified, I think it's safe to say that this man wasn't above doing some very nasty things. Sacagawea wasn't actually even her new hubby's first wife, or to be exact, his only wife. You see, when Charbonneau married our heroine, he was already married to another woman from the Shoshone Nation. Oh, and as though all this isn't bad enough, Charbonneau was also 30 years older than Sacagawea when they tied the knot. In November 1804, Sacagawea met 2 men who would change her life forever. The cartographers and explorers, Captain Meriwether Lewis and Captain William Clark. At first, their arrival didn't seem like a big deal, yet little did she know they would kickstart her incredible adventure. Lewis and Clark were on a mission to explore America's newly acquired lands and create a map of the territories gained in the Louisiana Purchase. However, their team wasn't quite complete. The men needed Indigenous guides and interpreters to help them map the continent. Since Sacagawea spoke Shoshone, the language spoken by many of the tribes where they were going, she was the perfect gal for the job. In a very satisfying development, Lewis and Clark didn't think much of Toussaint. They pretty much only took Charbonneau along because of his wife. However, there was just one catch. Sacagawea was heavily pregnant at the time. Mere months before the journey began, Sacagawea gave birth to her first child, a baby boy named Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau. Just weeks after giving birth, she set out with Lewis and Clark. The perilous trek began in April 1805, and while everyone knew it would be a hard journey, Sacagawea had it especially rough. She was a new mom, and she had to carry a newborn baby on her back. This girl was tough. Sacagawea was incredibly important to the journey, but so was her little baby boy, Jean-Baptiste. Clark immediately developed a soft spot for the boy, nicknaming him Little Pomp or Pompey because of the way he'd dance. And Jean-Baptiste wasn't just cute, he was helpful too. His presence immediately put other tribes at ease and assured them that the expedition was just here to map and travel, not to harm. Sacagawea acted as an interpreter between the explorers and other indigenous tribes, along with cooking, foraging, cleaning, making herbal medicines, and basically keeping everything running smoothly. In summary, Sacagawea made everything look easy, but soon she'd encounter something so chilling that it shook even her composure. While on the journey, Sacagawea underwent a heartbreaking realization. As she approached familiar-looking terrain, she realized that she knew this place. It was the land where the Hidatsa abducted her all those years ago. As a sign of how tough Sacagawea had become throughout her life, she didn't even cry when she recognized this monumentally important place. Instead, she simply went blank and seemed numb to her own emotional realization. This was far from the only tough moment on the journey. On May 14, 1805, the expedition hit a snag. Sacagawea's husband was steering one of the boats when a gale of wind suddenly disrupted the voyage. Charbonneau became so scared that in a panic, he nearly overturned the entire boat. This is one of the more famous moments in Lewis and Clark's journals. While her husband was praying, valuable papers and much-needed equipment tumbled overboard. As Charbonneau sat paralyzed by fear, Sacagawea bravely dove into the water and rescued the documents and tools. After Sacagawea's husband nearly lost the expedition's important papers and items, William Lewis wrote that Charbonneau was, and I quote, "a man of no particular merit. Not exactly a compliment." But at the end of the day, Charbonneau was no joke. He made Sacagawea's life miserable, as we know from a chilling passage in the explorer's journals. A month after she saved the expedition's documents, Sacagawea fell dangerously ill and went out of her senses. Historians now believe that she had gonorrhea, contracted from, you guessed it, her no-good husband. The rest of the expedition noticed Sacagawea's illness and Charbonneau's role in it. Clark felt so unimpressed by Charbonneau's behavior during his wife's frequent illnesses that he wrote, "If she dies, it will be the fault of her husband, as I am now convinced." Thankfully, Sacagawea managed to recover enough to continue the journey, but shortly after they hit the road, our heroine encountered another tough time. At this phase of the expedition, Lewis and Clark's crew actually reached Sacagawea's old home with the Shoshone people. The last time she encountered a place from her past, Sacagawea kept her emotions to herself, but this time they came rushing out. When she realized that she was back in her childhood home, her stony reserve finally broke. She sang and danced in joy, startling the other travelers who knew Sacagawea as someone who controlled her emotions. What's more, the land wasn't the only thing Sacagawea recognized. While there, she also met people from her past. Sacagawea met a girl who lived out another version of her life. Like Sacagawea, this woman had been one of the unlucky girls who were abducted by a rival tribe. However, unlike Sacagawea, she had managed to escape and even returned home to the Shoshone. Sacagawea must have experienced incredibly mixed emotions as she heard about the life she could have had. But the next familiar face was even more shocking. When meeting the chief, Sacagawea was encountering another face from her past. It was her brother who was now chief. When she saw him, Clark says that she danced for the joyful sight, and Lewis notes that he found the family reunion to be really affecting. The siblings talked privately for the rest of the night. By August 1805, Charbonneau leveled down from horrible husband to truly abysmal human being. During dinner, he decided to beat Sacagawea so brutally that even though Clark tried to stay out of his staff's personal lives, he simply could not stand by and watch Charbonneau terrorize his wife. He stepped in and demanded that Charbonneau stop attacking Sacagawea. In the autumn of 1805, the journey across America officially hit rock bottom. Lewis and Clark's surroundings were so bare that even Sacagawea, who could normally find food in any environment, came back empty-handed. In the end, the travelers were so hungry that they ate bear fat in an attempt to survive. Despite the dangerous journey, Lewis and Clark consistently described Sacagawea as one heck of a woman. She was, according to the two settlers, cheerful, resourceful, tireless, faithful. Clark summed it up best when he declared that Sacagawea inspired us. After a long and perilous journey, the travelers finally reached the west coast. Sacagawea felt thrilled. She didn't make many demands during the expedition, but when she heard that a beached whale was on shore, she insisted on going and seeing it for herself. She marveled at the monstrous fish and the beautiful Pacific Ocean. Soon after Sacagawea breathed in the ocean air, she and the rest of Lewis and Clark's expedition turned around. Unfortunately, their return home did not go smoothly. Sacagawea's son became dangerously ill. The entire expedition banded together to help the baby recover, and thankfully the little guy pulled through. He must have inherited his mother's fighting spirit. By late 1806, more than a year after Sacagawea had first joined the explorers, it was finally time to go back home. While we don't know how Sacagawea felt about the journey ending, we do know that parting with Lewis and Clark was emotional. Clark had grown to love Sacagawea's son so much that he even wanted to adopt him. Sacagawea and her husband lived with the Hidatsa for 3 years, before packing it all up and accepting Clark's invitation to meet him in St. Louis, Missouri. The family settled in the city and tried to make it work, but at heart, it seems like both Sacagawea and Charbonneau preferred the wilderness. They prepared to leave St. Louis, but before they headed out, Sacagawea made a devastating choice. She realized that with his wealth, social standing, and clear love for her son, William Clark could give little Pompey a better life than she could. In 1809, Sacagawea and her husband decided to let him take control of their son's education and left Pompey with Clark back in St. Louis, where he attended school and eventually grew up to become an explorer, just like his mother. At this time, Sacagawea was carrying her second child. Our heroine was extremely weak and ill, but in true warrior fashion, she managed to give birth to a little girl named Lisette. Sadly, Sacagawea wouldn't get to know her daughter very well. In December of 1812, Sacagawea became gravely ill, despite toughing it out so many times in the past. This time, Sacagawea couldn't make it through. She passed on December 20th, 1812, at just 24 years old. After losing his wife to illness, and pretty much losing his son to William Clark, Sacagawea's widower decided to throw in the towel and start over with a new family. Charbonneau accepted Clark's offer to formally adopt both of his children, while he returned to his old fur trading ways. While Pompey inherited his mother's adventurous gene, little Lisette wasn't so lucky. All we know is that she passed sometime during her childhood. Toussaint Charbonneau did not change his ways. His last marriage occurred when he was 70, and how old was the bride? 14. Even death couldn't stop Sacagawea's story. After she passed, she became an American and Shoshone icon. As a tribute to her role in mapping the nation, Sacagawea's face appeared on U.S. currency. Even better, the river, where she bravely saved important documents from the expedition, is now called Sacagawea River. One of the most famous aspects of Sacagawea's story is her supposed love affair with William Clark. Clark and Sacagawea clearly got along very well, with Clark nicknaming her Janie, saving her from her cruel husband, and adoring her baby son. So, were they secretly a couple? Most historians don't believe that Clark and Sacagawea were secretly in love with each other. Instead, scholars think they had more of a doting uncle, beloved niece kind of relationship. They cared for each other very much, but not in a romantic way. How does one summarize someone like Sacagawea? We have no documentation written by her to go by. Because of this, it's hard to get a handle on who she was and what she thought. But even from second-hand accounts, her bravery, need for exploration, and adventurous spirit continue to inspire. Depending on the translation, her name appropriately means boat launcher or bird woman. In both cases, seeing the world was part of Sacagawea's destiny. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more fascinating content.